This is criminal. This is the biggest public policy failure of my lifetime.
How's stage 2, mate? 2,000 kilometres of remnant forest.
Flattened.
For solar.
It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, isn't it?
People just... Today it's our privilege to showcase the work of the one and only Steve Nowakowski.
The last true greenie.
Exactly.
A man who cares for the environment more than anything else and is fighting to save it from the invasive pest known as renewable energy.
3, 2, 1.
We were lucky enough to catch Steve Nowakowski's presentation at a recent community meeting where some of what he showed was such an eye-opener, some of it confirmed our worst fears, mate. And all of it was delivered with only one thing in mind, saving the habitat and all that grows and thrives within it. The overall presentation is over an hour, so this is a condensed version. In fact, we're running this over 2 episodes because there are so many points you just have to hear.
Yeah, there's just too many things.
I know.
It'd be like an hour long.
It's crazy, isn't it? The first part focuses on the environmental attack from the wind industry. The second part focuses on the cost and footprint of going net zero and how at the end of the day, the system will still pretty much be reliant on fossil fuels, mate.
For sure.
There's a link in the description to the full presentation. Should we have a look and then have a chat?
Yep, sure.
Righto.
So we've planted tens of thousands of trees over the years. We run our own little nursery. We propagate our own plants, our rainforest trees. And we own and operate Australia's only cassowary rehabilitation centre. So we bring in injured birds, either from dog attack or car strike, and we rehabilitate those birds. They're really big rainforest birds, the heaviest birds on Earth, and then re-release them back into the wild. And that's been a great organisation. You know, we've achieved some really great outcomes. But what we saw happening was the movement of this renewable energy sector into our neck of the woods. And we saw firsthand what was occurring, what was happening. And our charter is really to protect and restore biodiversity, but the renewable energy sector was coming into town and just destroying biodiversity. And by that I mean places of really good high remnant, high elevation, high biodiversity areas. And it all sort of started for me in about 2016, 2017 with the construction of Queensland's very first industrial wind farm called the Mount Emerald Wind Farm, only about 45 minutes west of where I live in Kuranda, near Cairns. And I was pro-wind, pro-sun. You know, we need to build these renewables. And even though this particular wind farm was going in a really good remnant plateau, high elevation plateau, that's the price we need to pay. And I was actually engaged by the company called Ratch to photograph some elements of the construction of this wind farm. And what we've got here is a 56 metre blade, 20 tonne, and there's 55 wind towers on this site. So you can sort of see the scale there, and you have to realise that this is an old generation turbine from 2016, 2017. The new generation are basically twice the length of this. Okay, this is 55 metres. The new generation wind towers are around 85 metres, even pushing 100 metres for the 7.5 megawatt Vestas. So we thought this was big, but the new generation are even bigger. So as you can see, roads need to be modified, bridges need to be engineered to carry these big weights and loads and wide loads. For example, the nacelle, the centre gearbox for a wind farm, wind turbine, is around 300 tonne, so 300 tonne. So the roads have to be engineered for those weights. And in actual fact, the Caban site, the power lines had to be lifted over in the main street of Ravenshoe to get these big components down the main streets. Like I said I'm a keen bushwalker, love wildlife, love our wild places, and I used to bushwalk up in this area, Mount Emerald, quite frequently. And I'm there with a couple of botanists, and there was 5 endangered plant species, endangered plant species under the MNES, which we've learnt all about today, and they were going to be sacrificed for this wind farm. But we thought, well, that's the price we need to pay. That's a typical shot looking across the plateau. But what it is today is an industrial facility, carved up with roads, transmission lines, substations, and 55 wind turbines. It's now an industrialised area. To give you a sense of scale, I can't use the pointer, but you can see a small a bus. That's like a 55-seater school bus down below that turbine, to give you a sense of scale. But the new ones are even bigger. And like I said, they need to blast out the roads to get these components, blast out the ridge lines and to get the components into these remote locations. These are remote locations, high elevation areas. That's where the wind resource is through a lot of Queensland. And to access those places, the roads need to be pushed up into the high elevation Great Dividing Range or the coastal ranges. And a huge amount of civil earth moving is required. But so Mount Emerald was built, it became operational, and I thought, well, that's all we need, because the proponents, the developers and politicians were telling us that this wind farm was going to deliver power to 90,000 homes. And I thought, well, 90,000 residents, I suppose, but there's 100,000 people that live in Cairns. And I thought, well, that's great, because now we're carbon neutral. The city of Cairns is carbon neutral with one wind farm. That's how naive I was. And we're still being fed this lie by proponents and politicians that put in a wind farm that's going to power 100,000 homes or 200,000 homes. And I'll talk about that more later. So that was built, and then all of a sudden there was a new development called the Kaban wind farm. And I had a tip-off from someone within government department saying, Steve, the dozers are in there, document it, because this is another big wind farm going into some really good classified remnant vegetation. So I went out there with a drone, tried to get footage. Some of this footage I actually put on a high-vis vest, jumped into my mate's white Land Cruiser, looked like a tradie and drove on site. Released the footage on YouTube the next day. The day after that, big boom gates, full-on security guards. And what has happened ever since, all of these wind farms now are very heavily fortified with security guards to keep people like me away, particularly flying drones. In actual Lotus Creek, you go on to stay in the road reserve, nothing illegal. Security guards will come out, intimidate you, and they'll bring out their own drones and fly a drone 10 metres over your head to try to intimidate you to move on. So that they don't want this footage to be seen. Yeah, so this is the Kaban wind farm. So huge amounts of destruction in remnant forests. And we had speakers here this morning talking about how hard it is to knock over one tree or keep a fence line open. These are huge, big road corridors being punched through this area. This is all great, greater glider habitat, koala habitat, the lot. It's all there. Northern quolls, it's all there. So really big civil earth moving. So they're the turbine pads. Then there was 28 here. This is only a small wind farm, mind you. So as you can see here, this is one of the ridge lines that's been carved off, been blasted out by dynamite. And you can see the concrete foundations in the foreground. Those concrete foundations are 1,000 cubic metres of reinforced steel and cement. So 1,000 cubic metres. In an average 3-bedroom home, there's about 28 cubic metres. So that gives you a sense of scale. So you can see the huge amounts of cut that go into the mountainsides. And you have to realise those foundations need to cater for an 800-tonne crane to lift a 300 to 400-tonne nacelle gearbox in. So the roads need to be engineered to cater for an 800-tonne crane. The local residents were hoodwinked. They never knew that these towers were going to be the height they were. They didn't realise the amount of low-frequency sound they're going to emit. They didn't realise the amount of damage it was going to do to their local wildlife. They don't see wedge-tailed eagles or anything like that anymore. They're all gone. All the raptors go. So now they're starting to resist and push back against the other wind farms that are proposed in their area around Ravenshoe, Tamulin and Kaban. They weren't notified about the lights that flash at night, so their western horizon is now an industrial zone. So the lights are constant red, but the blades spin in front of the lights and they flash. So you've got all these red lights flickering on the horizon in there. So they used to see the starry sky at night, and now it's just light pollution. The impact on sarus cranes and wildlife is huge. Every time I visit the base of one of these towers, I always see a minimum of one dead bird or bat, sometimes up to 4. These are some of the species in one day. A white-striped freetail, northern freetail bat, Pacific swift. The Pacific swift is a critically endangered species, migratory bird, under the EPBC Act. Yep, and they fly in flocks. They follow insect movements after rain events. So all you need is one big flock to come through and you'll wipe out the entire population. On one visit, there was a half-dead little red flying fox underneath with a broken back. Had to ring up wildlife carer. They came in and euthanised it. And you don't get the data. You need to do freedom of information to try to get the data for dead bird and bats to get their surveys. They try to keep this secret. It's not common knowledge. So those wind farms were built near me up in North Queensland. I thought, well, what's coming? Because this is totally unsustainable. We just can't build hundreds of these. But in actual fact, we are. So myself and the volunteers in Australian Biodiversity Alliance put our heads together and we searched the internet. We went to websites, portals, EPBC Act, what's in the pipeline, state approvals, local councils. And at the moment, we've got about 319 renewable projects earmarked for Queensland. That consists of BESS batteries, pumped hydros, solar, utility solar and wind. So what I've got here, you can't read it obviously, but the name of the project, the tech type, the technology type, and also a web link. All of this is referenceable, so you can reference all of it. None of it is made up, it's not hypothetical. So if you collate that down, we've got about 5,100 wind towers proposed for the state of Queensland. New South Wales has 9,000. I've got to laugh, it's crazy. 154 utility solar projects are at different stages of the approval process in Queensland. 91 BESSs. The BESSs are very hard to find because they go to local council. I think the legislation has been changed a little bit with BESSs, so it triggers state legislation. It's huge, absolutely huge. The length of transmission lines is unknown. We don't know. No one knows. Chris Bowen flippantly says 10,000 kilometres. He's got no idea. You have to remember 30% of your electricity bill is transmission and distribution, and we've got to build about 10,000 kilometres, as what Chris Bowen says, to connect all of this junk energy together. And we hear a lot about really good projects, and there are, some projects are maybe considered good, but the Kidston pumped hydro, for example, is held up on a pedestal by the Australian Greens and the Labor Party as being a great renewable project. And on the face of it, it may seem to be that way, where you've got the old quarry pits that have been repurposed as dams, and then the old tailings dam covered in solar panels. So there's no, land clearing involved. But no one talks about stage 2, which is around 2,000 hectares of Thermida forest to be cleared to make it viable. Okay, so forests like that, which is Remnant. And I can talk to you, I can do a whole presentation about solar farms like this in Queensland, earmarked to clear, where Remnant has to be cleared for solar panels. In actual fact, the Waldoga solar farm cleared of concern Remnant vegetation for solar panels. And then the offset area was a hillside like this as an offset area. Yes, I've visited a few solar farms, and in New South Wales, for example, the Beryl Solar Farm, we hear a lot about the coexistence of livestock with solar. I'm yet to see the coexistence of livestock with solar farms. And in actual fact, this one here, the Beryl Solar Farm, I went to this site, there was no sheep. So I door knocked the neighbours and I said, have you seen any sheep? And they said, well, they did have sheep in there, but 2 got caught up in the hydraulic rams because the solar panels move. They got caught up, died, and they pulled the sheep out. The other problem they had here was sheep were nibbling the cables and destroying the kit. So I think the new generation solar farms have the conduiting underground or up above the panels, I'm not too sure. So this doesn't run sheep. So that's the current state of play. There is actually a couple of new ones down to the south that I haven't mapped yet. So that's sort of like the spatial footprint of what we're looking at. And what you can see there is that these wind farms are hard up against the existing transmission lines. They don't really care about the tenure type. They do not care about vegetation or bushland or matters of national environmental significance. That is not even their consideration. The consideration is they want to be hard up against existing lines because it's cheap. And it's unfortunate that that line is on the western side of the divide, and then just to the east you've got the high mountain ranges. So there's the wind resource up in the mountains and the high voltage down below, and they can connect. And that's what they're doing. That's the country, and this is what they're doing to all the ridge lines. Yeah, so I've got audio here, but it's not coming through. So this patch of forest here, koala, that's gone. That's been bulldozed. That's a lay-down area for vehicles and dongers and work dongers. That's the office area. So that's gone. All those mountains in the background are gone. They've been flattened and dynamited out. So if you want to clear trees, just call yourself a renewable energy company. Yeah. 101 koalas were found in the ecological reports, 138 greater gliders, and just smashed to smithereens. And these places on top of the mountains have existed because of its rough, really rugged topography, remoteness, and these are the places that have survived in terms of high biodiverse areas. And it's these areas that are now being targeted by the wind industry. That mountain in the distance, that's been flattened, been dynamited out. I'll just fast forward a bit. Yeah, so this, I'll just go to here. Yep, so they clear a big swathe about 70 metres wide because they need these wide roads for the sweep of the blade. So if these blades are 85 metres long, they need the sweep to be able to get these blades up these mountains. So that's looking down the range of mountains. That mountain, they dynamite out those. So you see how it's a knoll? They use explosives to knock the top of that off. That's a quarry. There's 3 concrete batching plants on this site because of the vast distances. So they've got a concrete batching plant to the north, south, and in the middle. So they're not moving concrete. Huge amounts of water coming out. They actually ran the well dry and they're trucking water in for the concrete batching plants right now as we speak. And this is just a recent helicopter trip that I did over the site. That's for one pad. You can see that that's a drill rig drilling down to put explosives into the top of that knoll. They place explosives and blow it out. You can see digging out one of the concrete foundation pads. Yeah, huge amounts of cut and fill. So this project was set up by Eperon, and then it was proposed by Eperon, then it was sold to Arc Energy, which is Korea Zinc, then it was sold to Vestas, then it was sold to Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, then it was sold to CS Energy, which is our state-owned energy corporation. So we own this. Steve Miles bought this project off Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners for 1.3 billion with a B, which equates to about $28 million per turbine. To show you what they do to the ridges. Yeah, so this was taken by an on-site worker. Yeah, so, yeah, they blast out. Sorry, yes?
Who owns the actual land structure there?
It's 2 pastoral leases. Yeah, pastoral leases, yeah. Yeah. This is the face of renewable energy in Queensland. This is not clean, it's not green, it's not cheap. Not one green group put in a submission against this project. In actual fact, they haven't put in a submission against any of these projects. It's just our group and a few others, like Protect the Bush Alliance and a few others. Small groups. Sorry? It's green energy. They've got a mandate to do whatever they like. So you can see here the dozers there on the ridge lines. They cut it up and then they just blast out the ridges for the turbine pads. Yeah, that's Squadron. This is Squadron Energy, Andrew Forrest. Yeah. Yeah. At the same point, so Andrew Forrest is building this. At the same time, he's building a gas import plant at Port Kembla to bring in gas, because he knows when the wind doesn't blow, he needs his gas. So he's tying up the energy market.
Gas we've already sold.
Yeah, we sell it to Japan and buy it back. Yeah. And that's sort of like what it looks like today. That's half of this wind farm looking south, and then you look at it to the north, and like I said, there's another 100 going beyond that, and then another 48 beyond that. So another 150 towers beyond these. This is Moa Creek wind farm. This is west of Rockhampton. This is sitting with Murray Watt right now. So as you can see, there's grazing land down below, and then this beautiful plateau, big vast plateau, very similar to Mount Emerald, of good quality remnant. And then I do the overlays to show where they're going to blast out with explosives, and they're going to blast right out the top of that cliff line to put turbines. That's all going to go. And what we're seeing with Murray Watt, you know, the Federal Environment Minister, they're not going to stop these things. There's just not enough pushback.
Why isn't all these videos and this sort of stuff on mainstream media?
You tell me. Yeah. This is Black Mountain. They need to knock about 20 metres off the height of this mountain, so blast it out 20 metres to bring the height of the turbine down so it doesn't interfere with aviation, and therefore they don't need to install lights. Yep, blast it out. This gentleman here, he let me onto his property. He's very concerned. He had a dedicated nature refuge in the foreground, and the wind farm is on that middle ridge going west. So he's going to have wind towers on the boundary of his area, of his property. He can't do anything about it. So he's going to have these are actually the big turbines, around 250 to 270 metres high. Yes, I did a bit of video out of a helicopter. Basically, everything you see there, every ridgeline, every hilltop, blasted out. Moving along, if we look at this is under construction now. Again, CS Energy bought this, so we own this project. Queensland taxpayers, and lots of heavy moving, heavy machinery. This is not the amount of CO2 being emitted for these projects is off the chart, and it's just not the clearing of the forest, it's also the carbon sequestration that's being lost from destroying forests. It's just insane. All that land there, that's cleared. I think there's a substation going there. I've got to check the maps, but that was all cleared. Yeah, try to do that for a dam or something, you know. Mount Hopeful, another one, crazy. They found yellow belly gliders and northern quolls up the top of those ridges there. Really good remnant. That's all going to get blasted out. Plebiscite's already approved that. So the key figures from all the mapping that we've done, if you look at Australia-wide, around 46,000 kilometres of new roads will need to be developed to push through all those turbines. There's around 447,000 hectares proposed for solar. At the moment, there's 29,000 hectares already of solar, and there's a proposed 31,000 additional wind turbines in the pipeline at different stages of the approval process. And if you add up all the capital costs of all those projects, which we've done, it comes to $1.38 trillion. And Chris Bowen was asked these questions. So the coalition October last year, was asked Chris Bowen on the floor of Parliament, with this data, is this right? Is there 447,000 hectares of solar? Is there 31,000 wind towers? It's going to cost 1.3 trillion. Is this right, Chris Bowen? And he just deviated, changed the subject, and he's never answered the question. So as far as we know, we are the only people doing this work. And if this is a $1 trillion industry, how come it's a volunteer group doing the work? This is criminal. This is the biggest public policy failure of my lifetime.
So our heads were spinning after the full 1 hour presentation. Remnant forests peaks to be blown off so that aviation lights don't have to be fitted. Peaks being lowered 20 metres. What is going on?
It just looks shit as well.
I know. Well, it's destroying
what it used
everything.
to look like.
Well, it's now bare, mate.
What it looks like now is... And the thing is, what's the lifespan of these things?
25 years. So what happens after that?
What company is going to still be around in 25 years that are going to go up there and actually clear that?
No, absolutely won't.
They're going to claim bankruptcy there or they're
yep.
going to...
Well, they won't have to bother, mate. The crazy part about this is these are hundreds of year-old forests, probably thousands of year-old forests. And for the sake of 25 years of wind, we're destroying them. And in 25 years, we'll go and destroy more.
Yep. Where the hell are the real greenies?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. No consideration of the environment. If it's renewable, you can just go ahead and have your way with it. Wind, solar, it doesn't matter. Go your hardest as long as there are transmission lines nearby. Where have we heard that before, mate?
Yep. Yep.
Farmland, agricultural land, arable land,
Yep.
remnant forest. It doesn't matter.
No, as long as there's a transmission line going through it, they'll do anything they want. Where the fuck are the Greens?
Exactly right, mate. So Steve was a Greenie, right?
Yep.
He ran for them.
Yep.
He was a supporter of their party, and
he was wanting the wind
Wind and solar.
turbines, and then he's looked into it more and went,
what? Exactly.
and he's done a full reverse,
Yeah, full 180.
which good on him.
Of course, because he realised that they were lying to him.
Yep.
It's all a lie. It's a
Yep.
con, mate. It's a greedy con. The Greens have been paid to shut up. We know that.
Yep.
Yep. They're on the take. They are no longer conscious. They're much more interested in being paid by Renewables Corporation to pay off their party needs.
Yep.
They don't care.
They
No conscience at all, mate.
no.
So much for caring for the wildlife. It's really interesting. Steve talked about the report into the koalas and the gliders.
Yeah.
What happened to those koalas and gliders? And I asked him that. I followed up with him, said what happened to them. And he said that all of that information is protected by Freedom of Information Act. So he applied under the Freedom of Information Act to get the information. And he came back and said, we'll give you the information. First, you have to give us $2,500. And he said, we're a volunteer program. How do you come up with that sort of money just to find out what happened? And he said, I would have got the document, and 3/4 of it would have been redacted anyway.
Yeah.
So he said they are hiding everything.
Yep.
The cost, the damage, the wildlife effects, the impacts.
It's wrong on such a massive scale. It's just to think there's going to be another 30,000 odd turbines going in.
Yeah.
Think how much wildlife and trees and plants are going to get destroyed.
Yeah. When we get to part 2, he talks about the how are we going to put all of this renewable energy in and reach net zero. And it's a really interesting comparison. We'll do that in the next episode. 1,000 cubic meters of steel and concrete per turbine. That's 36 houses equivalent.
That's crazy, man, isn't it? It's just so crazy.
That is absolutely insane. One 3-bedroom house, 28.
Is the average.
Yeah, 28 cubic meters. And this is taking 1,000.
Well, I mean, we looked at those ones when we were at Crookwell.
Yeah.
And they were big enough.
They were half the size of these.
Yeah, they were only, 140s or something?
150. And you stood under it and thought, holy hell.
I know.
That is bloody enormous. So the locals were hoodwinked. How have we heard this before, mate? They weren't told how big the turbines were going to be. So same in New South Wales as happening in Victoria. No communication, no consultation every single time. And they end up with those red flashing lights. Right?
Yeah, that would be hell.
When you're used to nothing.
Nothing.
Just the stars. That's why you live out there, right? If you want to live in a city, live in a city.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just shit.
It is.
Really shit for people who live there.
Then he says there's plans for 5,000 more towers in Queensland and 9,000 in New South Wales. 130,000 hectares of solar in Queensland alone are currently waiting for approval in front of Murray Watt.
Well,
Who doesn't care?
he'll just go tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10,000 kilometres of transmission lines still required and 40,000 kilometres of roads to be made.
40,000. I bet he gets built quicker than the bloody Monash.
No wonder we can't get our potholes filled. They're too busy doing this shit. The Gibson pumped hydro, green hydro, pie in the sky renewable energy. So then it gets shipped as green hydro, and then when it gets to the other end, it needs to be converted back to hydrogen. House stage 2, mate. 2,000 kilometres
just
of remnant forest
flattened.
for solar.
It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, isn't it? People who would normally be up in arms about this aren't up in arms because it's not on. It's
Not on the radar,
It's not on the. No one's talking about it.
No.
Only like a handful of little people like us and Steve Nowakowski, and that's all that's talking about. And then farmers fight back, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
And the Walker people. But when it does get on mainstream media, it gets 30 seconds or 3 minutes.
yeah.
You don't get a story.
No, you get nothing.
Exactly right.
It's really quite sad.
Another person saying sheep and solar
Don't mix.
Don't mix,
Yeah.
mate. We've heard that now for 6 months solid. You
Yep.
put some sheep in with the solar panels that are on hydraulics, you lose your sheep.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Or they'll eat the wires, or
Yep. Or they'll get so badly sunburned on the face that you've
Yep.
got to move them away anyway. So, yeah, we've heard it too often now for it not to be true.
Yep.
There's no pushback. So the government feels they've got the public's blessing to push on. There needs to be more pushback, hence the petitions and declarations that we ask people to sign and that others are asking to sign. So in episode 2, we'll show you what the national footprint looks like, where planned renewables are going, what is required to hit net zero, right? And how much it will cost us and what we will have to sacrifice as a nation to achieve it.
To achieve it.
It is insane, mate.
Mm.
And idiot Bowen is saying we're going to do 82% of it by 2030. In 4 years,
Well, you know who'll be paying for that.
we will be.
Well, most of it will come from. Well, where else is he going
It's
to
got to
get the
come
money?
from taxes, mate.
They have no money.
Taxes and electricity
Yep.
bills. Yeah.
Cheapest form of electricity.
We'll talk about the $1.328 trillion it's going to cost us in the next episode.
Mm.
Let us know what you think, everybody. That is just an eye-opener. And believe me, what's to come in episode 2 is even worse for our future.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See ya.
So yeah, that's bullshit, isn't it?
You watch it and you think,
That is-
holy hell.
You think how has this been allowed, man? It's like fuck off.
I know. It's exactly what you say.
Pack of dogs.
1 week, I'm just going to leave that in. We won't.